Booted Cardinals fans.
He settles down, at least in the zone, and does not stop running.
Blake Murphy.
This is the identity for the Arizona Cardinals.
The run defense is just horrendous, and it's been horrendous for the Cardinals for a long time.
And Marcos Labrada.
He's going to bring over his philosophy. It should make it better.
Present the hottest NFL podcast from the country's hottest state.
He should be turning around the logo.
Actually, some breaking news we can cover here. This popped up just about, 6 minutes ago.
It's Redbird Reboot.
Hello, Arizona Cardinals fans. Welcome into the Redbird Reboot podcast. Got your two hosts here at Pancake Soul, Marcos Labrada, and me, Blake Murphy. Make sure you can follow us on X if you're not already. And Marcos, we were off last week. A lot of just family business to have to be taken care of. A lot of stuff going on. There was a lot of stuff going on with the Arizona Cardinals as well. We didn't get as much of a chance to go and celebrate a really phenomenal finish to the San Francisco 49ers game in which Arizona came back down 13 points. The Niners, as has been the case this season, blew another lead. Arizona is able to make them pay with a couple of great final plays, a great interception. A lot of Cardinals fans were really optimistic heading into this Packers game. And a lot of the optimism is gone now because not only did the Cardinals end up losing 34-13, but there's been a rash of injuries that have occurred as well. Before we get into all of it, how are you doing, sir, as we enter into week number 7 of the Cardinals season?
Well, I'm not doing as good as I was last week, that's for sure. That was a very important game, and the reason why it was an important game is because it really kind of showed that the Cardinals can play up to a level that we weren't expecting them to, especially against a team that, with all being said, yes, the team did have a lot of injuries, but this is a 49ers team that the Cardinals haven't been able to beat for probably 2 or 3 years now in a row, with the exception of one road win that they had. And of course, Kyler Murray having his lone win against the 49ers in the beginning of 2020 season. And once again, overachieving situation where they opened up the year against the defending NFC champions by beating them on the road 25-23. And it was a great defensive and offensive game. Kyler Murray did showcase a lot of ability to be able to not only extend the plays, but be able to beat people with his feet. So that was a good game to look back to. And that's kind of almost on par with what happened against the 49ers, with the fact that the defense really did carry a big load to be able to allow the offense to chip away at that lead. They executed on a 2-point conversion, which was much needed. And of course, on a 4th and 5 or a 4th and 5, converting on that Marvin Harrison Jr. is down there. He's running an out route against an undersized corner compared to him. I mean, everybody's undersized compared to him. And he just completely bodied the guy. And Kyler Murray knew that he could trust throwing the ball down to his direction. He was going to come down with it. So it was an exciting game to go over. Unfortunately, we would have liked to have had that consistency and just stay on point, at least even keeled, or at least, build off of that win. But that wasn't the case against the Green Bay Packers.
Absolutely. No, and it's very interesting because just the narrative we'd seen for the Cardinals, they didn't have a great first half. They still were able to keep pace with the Niners. They were at one point, I believe that as far as the win percentage goes throughout the game, this is NFL Next Gen Stats tracks. Niners were essentially favored to enter the game, and then as the game went on, after the half, you had the punt from the Arizona Cardinals for the most part. The Niners drive down the field. It was a 95% chance of the Niners winning. Then once they're within the Arizona red zone, penalty, 3rd and 23, they send it back to Arizona. Cardinals were able to drive down the field for the most part. You even had a kick return for a touchdown by the Niners, but Arizona was able to essentially rally back. And the defense was the story of that game, Marcos. The defense stopped the Niners and held them on their last 4 possessions in the second half, held them to a total of 3 points and forced 2 turnovers, one being a fumble by, I believe it was their main running back, Jordan Mason, if not Isaac Guerrero. I know that Mason, I believe, at one point had gotten hurt in the game the following week against the Seattle Seahawks. And then, of course, that final interception by Kaiser White on the hit by Brock Purdy Get Nick Rallis sending the house. Arizona's able to get away with a win. Unfortunately, not quite the case as we said within Green Bay. But let's talk and focus first on this Niners game, because coming off of the Commanders game, most people were leaving the Cardinals for dead. Like, some people went, all right, you playing the Niners now. If you don't win this, you're going to be 1-4. You're going to be in this position where you're probably going to be in the same spot you were last year. And you've got a tough upcoming schedule with games against playoff teams like the Niners, a team pushing for the playoffs, and the Chargers. The Bears have seemed to figure things out, trying to find like where Arizona can truly advance for this year. Now, what they do instead, of course, is they put up one of their best defensive efforts of the season. We also see the San Francisco 49ers really seem to miss Christian McCaffrey. He went off against the Cardinals last year. We got to see that with him and Brock Purdy. Brandon Ayuk had his best game of the day. But at the end of the day, it really ended up coming down to the fact that the Niners, for whatever reason, had the Cardinals by a 13-point advantage. I think it was at one point 19 points even. Arizona then was able to get a touchdown. The fact that the Cardinals at least came back into this game, despite how often the Niners got into their red zone, just shows they did not have the ability to finish. They didn't have the ability to punch the ball into the end zone. It's some great play design, including the Kyler Murray designed run that he kind of like fakes the QB power, pulls back, throws the ball into the end zone. You got a tight end leaking out, and Elijah Higgins catches it for the touchdown. Put on James Conner on the line to go for 2. It really was one of those games that had everything. Now, this to me, I think, showed that when the Cardinals have the ability to not just, put forth effort, but also when the defense gives them opportunities and the offense takes advantage of it, that's something that we didn't see the previous week. Because remember, in the week before this Niners game against the Commanders, Cardinals get an interception of Jaden Daniels. They had that pickoff, I believe it was by Williams, over the middle of the field on an overthrow. Arizona went 3 and out, punted it back to the Commanders, could not capitalize on that. In this game, they did capitalize on mistakes and were able to walk away with a win.
Yeah, that was basically the difference, because you saw both our linebackers takeaways on diving interceptions on both circumstances being batted balls. Okay, so one of the things that I really found curious about this game, and I didn't talk about it enough, and obviously we didn't cover this, but DTD did have a great game, and it was for the first time that he had some enough snaps to be able to grade him and be able to actually get a full picture of how well he was doing. It was one of those refreshing things to see that he not only played like how it was advertised by people like Brett Coleman, saying that he was, in his opinion, he was just like someone like I forget the name of the guy that we had for like years. That was
Honey
such
Badger.
a great player for us. Honey Badger. There you go. Another animal. So basically, he said in his opinion, he was just like Honey Badger, the type of player that Honey Badger represents, the type of, player that Budda Baker represents, is those like hard-nosed players that you can put in the slot and come down and play as a box safety, that can also play as a half. You could even put him as a deep field safety, as a single high safety, but he can come down and understand the rules of leverage when he's playing in that apex position, because there's a lot of responsibility when you have to come down from safety and when you have to come down to the box. And most of the time when you're coming down to the box, you're not playing like, hey, you're coming down and playing the outside corner. You're playing the apex. You're playing the guy that has the most reads and responsibilities. His ears have to be open for anything that could be called by the hook defender, which is the linebacker, or the cornerback, which could be calling for a smash. He could be calling for I forgot what the term was, but it's basically to indicate that his wide receiver is going inside. So he would probably be making like an out call at that time, or under. He would be making an under call. He has to listen for that. That's in 1 year. And the other year, he has to listen for a push call from the hook defender. So all these responsibilities are given to a person that can come down from the safety spot and play that role. I saw some great play by Demaryius Demerson. DTD. There you go. Yeah, DTD. I'll just go ahead and say DTD. Sorry, I'm a little bit rough, but we haven't had a podcast in like 2 weeks, so give you a break. But the responsibilities that he had coming down and being in coverage they were great. Like, and I was impressed by it. Like, there was that one play that I highlighted on X where he came down and broke a ball on a on a crossing route, and he timed it perfectly to force the breakup. And it was something that I saw people like like the Honey Badger do early in his career, or somebody who's a great like slot cornerback that knows how to time these routes and break these balls loose. So I would like to see more of him. And the issue with that is that now there's talks about maybe the Cardinals should consider trading away Buda Baker, or maybe cutting the snaps of Jalen Thompson, who doesn't seem to be playing at the level that he's played in Cardinals past years. So obviously he's a safety valve there, and I think we're in good hands if one of those guys goes down or is traded away.
Yeah, no, that was a huge highlight. I think we also got to see some of the continuing storyline of the Cardinals, especially on their opening scripts. Now, what was the thing coming off of the Commanders game that I think pretty much everyone talked about, Marcos, was you got to get Trey McBride more involved, and why isn't Kyler Murray running the ball anymore? He only had one carry in that game as far as for a designed run. Here we get to at least see how the Cardinals were able to open up with him under center. You're going to have kind of that typical counterplay where you can see the 62 Evan Brown getting outside, looks and fakes the handoff to James Conner. You've got what looks to be at least just kind of a nice little simple concept outside. Trey McBride himself, at least in this spot, is in an interesting place because you got 12 personnel. You end up seeing him kind of stumble out of the block, but he ends up getting wide open on a coverage bust. So here you can see you've got Fred Warner is in the middle of the defense. At the other linebacker with the safety back here, this guy is just basically trying to run interference so that you can't really have them pick up the man in McBride that he needs to. You see, they both kind of are following the same guy in Elijah Higgins. He's got at least three guys open in like the same area, which is kind of interesting. Like, you'd think this would be a nice overs concept. I think that Higgins had to adjust his route because he didn't end up getting as free of a release as I think he may have expected to kind of take the underneath. He just kind of pushes back and then finds that, I got to turn around. Both guys running to that spot is interesting, but instead Kyler just is able to take the wide open guy in McBride. This is the 12 personnel, 13 personnel types of plays that we've talked about that should be Arizona's bread and butter. It starts with that play action under center.
Yeah, that was actually pretty funny that there was a little bit of friendly fire there between the slot, the apex defender and the hook defender there, running into each other because of confusion of who has who. That's how big plays like that happen. If you go and you look up like on YouTube Trey McBride highlights, you'll see a lot of stuff that comes out of Yak, and that's one of the things that's one of the reasons why I thought to myself, it's very important to not only have him be like one of the main focuses on the offense. I think I'm not sure if I mentioned this on this podcast or if it was on Red Rain, but I mentioned that like Trey McBride needs to be the focal point of this offense. He needs to be like, so you have to get involved heavily. You saw Kyler Murray go to him in the Green Bay Packers game constantly, and it was something that even the broadcasters were picking up on. Like, there's Trey McBride again. There's Trey McBride again. They call him safety wells for a reason. It's because they're a mismatch to whoever's defending him. If it's a safety, he's too small. If it's a linebacker, he's too slow. And you can't like underrate the ability that he has, like when it comes to the speed. So there's plays that I'm seeing that are now going towards James Conner. They used to be plays that used to be centered around someone like Trey McBride. So we all seen that under center action, fake the handoff, and then the screen from underneath that is kind of designed to be a tunnel screen. I don't know if you've noticed this, but I've been noticing a lot of these plays going towards James Conner, and with high success, because I have been seeing like at least 9 yards or 10 yards gained on these type of plays, and in best case scenario has been 20. Those plays used to be specifically for Trey McBride. He would obviously be an attached tight end, fake the block, or kind of have like a little bit of a chip, and then he would turn around and wait for that ball to be delivered to him by Kyler Murray, and he turns around and he takes off. If you watch like his 2023 highlights, you'll see a lot of that action. I'm not 100% sure why they're going away from calling those type of plays to Trey McBride, them being so successful. But I want to see that again. I want to see a lot of that. I want to see a lot of yak opportunities for like Trey McBride. He's a very good yakster.
It felt like we got a little glimpse, and this is kind of fast forwarding ahead a week. We got a little glimpse of that against the Packers when Marvin Harrison Jr. Was out of the game. They seemed like they detached, and part of it is that they had to pass the ball more because they were behind, but they detached Trey from the line. I think that some of it goes down to the issues they've had of being able to pass protect in multiple places, as far as, you usually need to be able to just accept that with a backup right tackle in there, now even with a backup right guard this last week, being able to run the ball up the middle, if teams are clouding the side, you're going to have to keep some tight ends to try to be able to make some of those counter plays work. But it does, like you said, take away some of not just the screen games to McBride, but being able to use him in these types of one-on-one matchups. Before we at least are kind of focusing on just what we saw with McBride, one thing I did want to talk about also, and this is maybe the second takeaway we saw from the Niners game, was Kyler Murray and some of these designed runs. So we get to see here Cardinals lineup. This is a classic 13 personnel look from them. Marv is the one receiver on the outside. They motion Higgins over. This is the pre-snap motion. You can see the defense kind of just subtly adjust. You can tell if they're still playing essentially a zone across the board, but the tight ends looking to see if they can key in on the run game. This is a play the Cardinals have run plenty of times. What they do in this spot instead from the pistol is Kyler makes a little quick adjustment, gets the ball, and then on the simple read option, you can see they let Nick Bosa go, at least up front, and you can see Kyler just ends up keeping that and then just follows with his blocker in front of him. You get a great block from Tip Ryman over here on the side. Higgins is out there in space, and the safety actually came down to the wrong side, so he got baited by that play action fake, ended up going down, following it essentially to the right, and Cardinals end up pulling off an amazing play with Kyler Murray's speed. And look at that, you get him not running east to west, but he gets north and south in a hurry. And he points back there at that 45-yard line. That was one of those little clips or screenshots you want to call it that went viral, because as soon as he got there, he sees no safety in front of him. The safety actually came down into the box on that play. He completely loses track of where the ball is. And as soon as he gets past there, realizes that he's got no one to beat, no one in front of him. And with that 4.3 speed, he is not caught all the way to the end zone. Cardinals go and get a 1-2-3 stop. They go up and put 7 points, exactly the way that you needed this game to open up.
Oh boy, that was impressive. And I have to kind of like eat crow on this, because I've talked about, like, ever since his career started, I haven't seen Kyler Murray show any pull away speed. He showed pull away speed there, like, easily. I mean, the reason why he pointed there is because obviously there was nothing but green grass, but he also pointed because he knew no one was going to catch him. He knew that no one's going to catch him, and I was impressed. I think they said he hit like 21.5 miles an hour, something ridiculous like that.
Fastest of any quarterback in 3 years. Very, very fast.
Very impressive, yeah. I think before that it was someone. It was ridiculous. It was like Daniel Jones when he ran away from the defenders and he fell before he even got to the end zone. Exactly. Like, he stopped himself from being able to score a touchdown. But it's crazy that, like, because I've always talked about how his stride length is stopping him from being able to pull away, and he showed that he can pull away there. He just, like, he hit the afterburners, and when I was watching that play live, I thought to myself, so I think it was a lead play. I'm not sure if it was like a TE lead, or I'm not sure what the terminology for that would be, but it would be a lead play in my opinion, because of the fact that you had tight end going across the formation at the snap and become his lead blocker. You also saw what value Tip Ryman brings to this offense, because he's always constantly in a position where he can, like, down block on these linebackers in the second level. And these linebackers are just, they just cannot compete with someone like him. He not only is outsizing them, especially for the modern day linebacker, he's just such a good technique, and it's great to have, like, not only 1, 2, but 3 great blocking tight ends. I hear a lot of Tip Ryman, like, hate out there, like, why did we go and get him in the third round? Well, there's a reason. It's because it's part of this offense, and what he brings to this offense is a role that is very, very detrimental to be able to fill, especially if you want to feature Trey McBride in more of a receiving role.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, Tip Ryman, at least in that spot, was very effective in that game. There's still rookie mistakes that we're seeing, but in that game, he actually went and blocked Nick Bosa at once and then kept that block essentially going. Was able to also take out Fred Warner on the play. So that was both of the 2 Hall of Famers on the defense. He's been doing a good job overall as far as at least seeing some of that impact, part of why they at least added him. Some of the other things that we've also been able to see is the Cardinals being able to mix it up a little bit with their play calling. So this is against the 49ers. Cardinals essentially were able to get a stop. This is going to be, now, unfortunately, this is also the play where you'll see number 76, Will Hernandez, gets injured on this play. He gets rolled up under on that spot. James Conner takes the handoff down to the 5-yard line. That ended Will Hernandez's season. So it was a win over the Niners, but unfortunately it did come with I won't say significant cost in terms of, it's not like you're saying that Paris Johnson is down and suddenly you're talking about Kelvin Beacham's your left tackle. You had a 5th-round rookie on the right, but it is at least a significant loss of, he's been your best offensive lineman for the past few years. You can at least see without going into the injury there. Nick Bosa gets cast aside, falls under him, he gets carted off. The next play, as far as what we've talked about, has been some of the innovation that we did see for the most part with Cliff Kingsbury originally, but also says something about Kyler Murray here as far as when you get into this down and distance and then the red zone, his legs should mean instant death for the opposing defenses. You got him and James Conner. That's something that we've been able to at least see, that they've been able to get the ball to Conner a lot in these goal-to-go situations. But with Murray, even on these passing plays, you can make use of him. So what the Cardinals did in this was they basically ran a QB power with, it looks like got the one guy pulling on the counter, got the other guy taking the outside route, and James Conner, who's looking to block. And you've got Elijah Higgins, who's out here looking like he's making a block as well. Now, what they do with this is essentially tight end leak. Tight end leak is one of the more easily recognized plays. You may remember a few years ago against the Bears, there was that Max Williams touchdown from Josh Rosen. We've seen Max Williams touchdown from Kyler Murray on there. Essentially, the tight end acts like he's going to block and then just gets out of there and slips himself upfield and gets open. Kyler is under duress because they're able to see when he starts running what looks like a power, he just backs up, flicks it at the top. Higgins managed to get both feet in, and the Cardinals are able to close the gap. It was a huge play in the game because after that, the Cardinals were actually able to force a fumble on the next series, I believe, and get the ball back for another chance to go down, and actually were able to get the game from that spot. Very, very nice little touch, fun little trick play. One of those things that, once you've seen it, you're going to be able to stop it. But pulling that out of the bag was something that Drew Petzing did that we hadn't seen as much before. The immediate next play afterwards, of course, was the James Conner 2-point conversion. And this is something that got Jonathan Gannon praise. Like, there's not going to be as much doom and gloom you can talk about with a game like this against the Niners. The Cardinals are actually down, I believe, here by 3 points. So I think it's 4 points. You kick a field goal, you're down 3 points. You can tie it with another field goal. But if you go for 2 in this situation, you can then win it with a field goal. This is kind of one of those new analytics things. The best way to think of it is, would you rather have be 2 points behind with the ball in your hands, or be 3 points behind with the ball in your hands? Because that's what it essentially is worth. Now, because there was a penalty on the previous play, Arizona got the ball with half the distance to the goal. That made it a lot easier to go for it. So here in this spot, you've got a new guard in there at least, and they're just able to kind of hand it off to James Conner. They have a good block right up the middle from, I believe that's Evan Brown. Conner's able to just kind of lower the shoulder, gets in. It looked close at the first effort, but he follows his block, and Cardinals end up putting themselves in position to win the game, should they be able to get the ball back. So he runs in first, keeps the legs churning, and is able to score on that 2-point conversion.
Yeah, that was a fun play to look at over and over and over again. I didn't mention that Fred Warner kind of let that play happen because of the fact that he let a tight end get behind him, and in a scenario like that, you are supposed to kind of think about what's going on and why is this happening? Because if you let a tight end run right behind you, or a wide receiver or a running back in a play that could be designed to where the quarterback can still get rid of the ball, you're pretty much leaving him to himself back there. And if the quarterback does have that outlet to be able to deliver that ball, which we've seen it once before with Cliff Kingsbury against the Cowboys, Kyler Murray was, faking like he was going to run. He was under center. He went for a boot. They, stopped it. They basically read the boot and were right there in a good position to be able to stop it. And Kyler Murray goes ahead and throws it to his tight end for a touchdown. That's the same scenario right there. But it was great that was the type of play that went to, because you probably won't see that play again this year. Those are those type of plays where you see him like once or
Yeah,
twice.
we'll have to mix
in
it
the
up a
season, and
little
that's
bit
it.
at least. But like you said, they had to have it. They were able to pull that play out of their bag and be able to score on
Yep.
it. And speaking of pulling things out of their bag, the defense did a good job of getting stops when they needed to. It was very much a bend but don't break, because they let the Niners march up and down the field. The very next series, the Niners get down to the Arizona 17-yard line. This is 3rd and 6. You get them off the field. You've got a chance to actually come back with a touchdown, I believe, to be able to actually get the score. On 3rd and 6, they essentially just get it to George Kittle over a pretty much lack of pressure. I will say it's less even pressure. He's pressured as far as the quarterback. They move him off the spot. They've got 2 guys on Roy Lopez. They're not really able to pull a stunt with the likes of Zaven Collins. And then as far as it goes on the main edge rusher side, Dennis Gardeck, he's up against Trent Williams. Like, Trent's just anchoring for all of that. They end up losing a little bit track of guys underneath. You can see here that they're following the quarterback size, but 2 guys that they have in the middle over there kind of get lost in some of the traffic. I think it's fine coverage, because if you're looking at where Murphy Bunting, he ends up handing it off between the safety and the linebacker. That's kind of how your zone coverage is supposed to be. They just have a good play call that gets Juszczyk out here as a receiver that kind of pulls the defender. He has to pick between one of these 2, puts him in conflict. Kittle's just able to open up across his face, and he runs over Kaiser White to get that first down. So White had a chance at the tackle. At this point, you're like, all right, Niners have a chance to just run the ball here 2 or 3 times. They can kick a field goal, be able to go up, forcing the Cardinals into another type of turnover. The admiration for the work he's doing here on Trent Williams is Dennis Gardeck. We just have not seen Arizona been able to win some of these different plays, and credit to Brock Purdy for being able to extend them. That said, we do end up with the very next play when you have a got-to-have-it sort of stop for the Arizona Cardinals. They need it. This is where that forced fumble takes place. So you get Jordan Mason trying to run the clock down. He flips it back to him. He kind of goes down to the outside and gets the ball stripped while trying to kind of push for extra yards. It was Jesse Luketa who ended up forcing that out. A lot of times they'll say that if you're trying to hustle for extra yards, it's like football guys, it's part of like the thing. They just want to keep pushing, making more plays. Sometimes the smart move is to be situationally aware of, hey, I fumble the ball here. That's the only thing you can't do. Like, you take a sack, that's fine. You go down for a loss, that's fine. Run out of bounds for a loss. All of those are fine options. It's just making sure to avoid a turnover in your enemy territory, because that takes 3 points off of the board. You end up seeing Kaiser White actually is there. And then Luketa comes in with a heck of an effort getting off of that block, is able to force the fumble. And suddenly the Arizona Cardinals have life. The ball gets jumped on by Matt Wilson. And he's good job paying attention. The Niners, for whatever reason, you can see here, they just look away after the play, think that it's over. Paying attention ends up mattering. And Arizona gets the ball back by 2 with a chance to be able to go and not just tie up the game, but have a chance to go down the field and win the game.
Yeah, so it was great that like they were able to force the ball, like turn the ball over in those situations, because if we don't get one of those turnovers, we lose the game. And even at the end, like the very last play of the game, I believe that game, George Kittle's wide open against someone like Kaiser White in coverage, and he had like probably like 3 or 5 yards of space between him and the ability to be able to catch it and go out of bounds with it. They only needed like 2 points to win this game. So that's why it was so important to be able to have these type of hustle plays and whatnot. Luketa just diving and just coming down with that club. I thought to myself, like, he didn't go for the tackle. He just dove and he punched that ball out. And it like, I have to commend Kaiser on the read to be able to sift through all that traffic and take him down. But the fact that he didn't take him down initially and Mason was still fighting for yardage was the difference between them ending up with the ball, and it's just a tackle for loss.
Yep, it's one of those don't give up on the play sort of things. The Cardinals, though, they are not without their struggles. They get a first down with a good run from James Conner. Able to pick up another first down. They end up kind of getting into one of those spots where they're in 3rd and 5. Niners put everyone at the line. They rush. I think it was I think it was 6 guys total at Kyler Murray. Ball gets batted down at the line. Good play by the defensive lineman. So you're in this 4th and 5 situation, have to go for it. You'll see at least here, as far as this is the play that everyone was looking at for the most part, and they got to have it down situation. You can see you got trips right. Kyler, what he does is he kind of pulls Trey McBride to the other side. You can tell it's man coverage. Suddenly, you've got a guy coming off the edge, 2 players over there plus the safety. You've got at least 2 one-on-one matchups there at the bottom of your screen. You got Harrison Jr. You got also, I believe it's going to be Michael Wilson and Greg Dortch is down there as well. They at least point out and call at least that they're bringing 5 guys. So you know that it's going to be essentially a blitz. You're going to have man coverage. Kyler just ends up backing up. They even leave a spy to make sure that they don't do some sort of QB draw for him to be able to run. And what you can see within this situation here is that it's essentially just a spot throw. So they get it lined up where you've got Greg Dortch is running the inside, taking the safety with him, taking the other corner with him. For Marv, it's just that he just has to basically run, get off of the press coverage, be able to get open and make a play. And Kyler, he just has to kind of sprint back and give him time. And he just trusts Marv to come down with the ball, puts it in the right spot. Marv also doesn't kind of take his route and drift it up further with the ball, at least for throwing it over. Kyler's able to put it in front where he knows the bigger body can box his man out. So 4th and 5, boom, they pick it up. And this is kind of the point, I think, where a lot of Cardinals fans felt the fortunes shifting their way. After this sort of got to have it play, ended up turning into a completion for Arizona, getting them almost into that field goal range.
Sorry. Oh crap. Do I have my Mac? Sorry, you just heard me. I thought I had my mic muted. That's the reason why I was saying that, and I did the complete opposite. Anyhow, sorry about that. So one thing I love to go over with this play is like go back to the very beginning because I'm gonna go ahead and do the sideline view, and I'm gonna go ahead and see if I can call out what this defense was running, because a lot of people will say this is a full out cover 0. This is not cover 0. I believe this is cover 1 dog. So you have man
Clearly
coverage all
cover
across
1
the
dog.
board. Yeah, you have your 1 high safety. You have everybody like on somebody. You can see like the traveler right there with the wide receivers on corners on like wide receivers and whatnot. You have the 1 high safety. You have the one linebacker that's dropping into that middle hook zone. So that's the reason why I can say it's cover 1 dog, because it usually indicates 1 blitzing linebacker and 1 linebacker, or cover 1 rat, which is probably the rat defender there. It's interchangeable when it comes to like how they look. The difference is who's blitzing on that one. Anyhow,
right. They bring 6, they drop 1 into coverage at least, and that's partially to make sure that they can take away that quick passing lane with Greg Dortch down below, as well as if Kyler Murray's going to actually run up the middle, because sometimes we'll see you rush everybody, quarterback can just take off through that hole in the pocket and then pick up the first down with his legs so no one has him. You also even saw in this play, like, they did a really nice job of lining 2 guys up here on this play for the most part, so that we kind of overloaded Paris by having the other edge defender out so wide, because then you can rush someone straight over here at Paris, another guy. Essentially, you're going to get at least 1 body off of the edge toward the quarterback, while Nick Bosa has a one-on-one matchup with, of course, Kelvin Beachum. You just had to get rid of the ball quickly in this scenario. Kyler's able to back up, throw it off of that back foot. And like you said, the cover 1 is nothing it's able to do for the most part because of that deep middle of the field. I believe that it was Michael Wilson, actually, who ends up being the guy on that deep route to kind of pull the safety away, so that way they don't have a throw over the top.
And he gets held. I don't know if you saw that, but he got his
he got held on the way, shoulder pad. One of the guys jumped off sides. Like, some of these calls are not going to have, but in this case, it was one of those spots where Kyler essentially cleared everything out. Everyone who was running is going to be running to the right side of the field, essentially, and then Marv just pulls back off to the left. Is able to kind of lead a throw out there for him, well placed, and the Cardinals are able to pick up that first down.
Yeah, he attacks the leverage on that corner. I believe that corner is probably like 5'10", so he has a size advantage, and that's the reason why it was such a smart call to just throw it in that vicinity. I see Kyler Murray's looking his direction. You can tell from like the way this helmet looked, and so he knew that he had the mismatch down there. I mean, look at the size difference between these 2 guys. Yeah. It's staggering. Of course, if you have outside leverage and you're coming back to the ball, you're more likely to come back with it. So it was a good thing for him to like buy the little bit of time. He knew that there was going to be a free man off the edge. You saw the receivers the corners banjo the receivers. So the receiver that looks initially like he's going to be on Marvin ends up switching off and taking Greg Dortch on the crosser, and then Marvin's taking the out route on the shorter guy. Because Lenore probably gives Kyler Murray some trouble getting that completion, but number 22 wasn't going to do anything. So that was awesome.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's either the next player, I think it is that they actually do another similar read with Kyler Murray on the design keepers. You can see Fred Warner staring him down. Nick Bosa takes the inside guy. Kyler pulls it. And actually in this spot, he probably should be tackled. Like you're thinking, if he goes up north, upfield, this guy's going to be coming back on him or someone could block him in. He ends up still scampering just past him, picks up the first down. And now you're essentially realizing, okay, he had a kick blocked. Even Jay Feely said that kick was too low. He adjusted, was able to at least make that game-winning kick. But this is one of those times where when we've needed to see the Cardinals have those must-have plays and Kyler can use his legs, that's something that has been productive. And I don't think it's to say, oh, just run Kyler every play, then if it gets to the result. It's being able to have that three-dimensional sort of offense that you can pull out some of these plays. And that ends up being the one that does get them, I believe, into field goal range. I believe the next couple of plays, they're able to get the ball a little bit closer by just handing it off to James Conner. He makes his way all the way toward the 20-yard line. So now you know that outside of a block or a just straight miss, it's not a gimme field goal, but it's getting closer and closer to what an extra point would be. That's where you're able to know that Arizona is about to actually go up and score. The Niners will have a bit of time left, but of course that final big play that we saw in the game, of course, is just one of those blitzes from Nick Rallis, Marcos.
And I love the call there. I was a big fan of the call. So obviously that's the last play of the game. If we're able to pull that one up, that'd be awesome. So we can go ahead and break it down. That was so there's another little bit of confusion. Somebody had mentioned that they saw Jalen Thompson coming from the edge. He was not coming from the edge. He was attacking the B gap, or I think it was either the B gap or the A gap. You see two defenders going up to that same direction. So you see Jalen Thompson passing on, George Kittle is his job is not to block. Try to get open on this. I don't know if they didn't read that they were going to be hot from that side. So I think that must have been something of Brock Purdy not picking that up. But they were creeping down. He doesn't give a hard count. He just goes in and snaps the ball.
It looks a little bit like a cover 3 type of look, but what he does, of course, with this one is he actually goes and fires everyone from this side, keeps the one guy back. Like you said, the ball I think was intended for Kittle. Like this is essentially the perfect play design against this because they're going to have a guy in the middle of the field essentially to make sure that if anyone comes back across, they're going to be at that line. So Kittle's wide open, but because of how that pass rush and that protection breaks down, like you said, the A gap is going to be on either side of the center. The B gap is going to be between the guard and the tackle on either of those sides. So what they do in this spot, they have Jalen Thompson. They get a little bit out late to the line. He kind of creeps up along with, I don't think that's Barnes. I think that's the, it is. I think number 51, the other linebacker. Barnes. Yeah, so they got Chris Barnes here. What they'll have is they got 1, 2, 3, 5, 6 guys who basically rush. You've got another 1, 2, 3 on the outside. You've got one more guy in for pass protection. Like you said, this is one of those blitz designs that you can say, hey, if you bring 2 guys over here through the B gaps, the other guys, they're basically just rushing to try to hold it open. So see, he's running to the inside. They're trying to pull him in. He's trying to keep the outside leverage. You got a running back who's got to pick between either of these 2 guys. So you have to get skinny and be able to get up front. He's just reading the quarterback's eyes for the most part. So even though Kittle gets wide open, you can see he's probably looking for Brandon Ayuk on the play to go to the outside for what looks like a back shoulder fade. He gets a free run at the quarterback, does Jalen Thompson. And that then when he is able to get that free run, just runs back, hits the ball in the air. Kaiser White, reading the quarterback's eyes all the way, is perfectly placed to be able to get that ball to flutter, picks it off, game over, Cardinals win.
Yeah, and right here, the running back did do what is fundamental, which basically take the biggest or the closest threat, which is having to pick up Kaiser White. But because he had 2 people running his direction, that put him in conflict because he had to choose between one or the other. So
you get a free hit at the quarterback. This is on Brock Purdy to get rid of the ball very, very quick. And sometimes, like we said, it's like there's only so much you can sometimes do as a quarterback. Like sometimes defense just wins a rep. Like they got a really fast Jalen Thompson closing in who happens to get a hit on him just before he is getting rid of the ball, which allows it to then float. Because in this situation, clearly, get rid of the ball quick, hit an open George Kittle. You probably get the first down, get to keep moving it. Sometimes this is just what you have to do as a defense is be able to dial up, and those some blitzes are going to end up missing or getting picked up, or they get the ball out quick. Some are able to get home like that.
Yeah, and I mean that doesn't happen. Like I said, if he doesn't call it where it's like it's a linebacker / safety blitz, if he doesn't call it going to the same direction, that gets picked up more likely than not, or it becomes a situation where he knows the heat's coming, so they shaded it towards the side where they. I think that's where they felt where Brock Purdy wasn't going to throw the ball to, so they knew wherever George Kittle was going to end up, and if George Kittle's an attached line tight end, he's probably running a crosser. And thank God that, like I said, they got to him because he was wide open on that look. Kaiser White was nowhere close to him. He would have picked up that first down and gone to the out of bounds, and who knows what would have happened at that situation. You didn't want them to kick a field goal at that point. You needed a big stop or a turnover. So, and the way they did it was I'm a big fan of it. Timing it. Don't throw them. Don't place them at the line of scrimmage and declare that you're blitzing. Time it. Try to get him, like Jen Thompson had to come from the third level, kind of cop his way down to the second level because he was trying to time it. He wasn't trying to give away, hey, I'm coming. I don't want you to know that I'm coming. And then at the same time, Kaiser White blitzing on the same gap to put Mason in conflict. That just did it. So that was a brilliant call, brilliant execution, and a great way to be able to end the game.
Yeah, totally agree. All right, now, so after that week ended, Marcos, we end up with a little bit of sad news, obviously. Cardinals do lose Will Hernandez for the season, which is something that it's unfortunate, but like something that happens. You have guys who are going to get hurt. It just feels like the Cardinals at this point, it's been very much the same sort of groups. Like you're missing, obviously, for this game, you were missing your cornerback Williams. At least probably been your best performing corner thus far this season. You ended up having, I believe, at least there was the crazy flag. I know that Sean Murphy bunting earlier that had kind of turned into that end of game possession against the Commanders. It kind of sunk Arizona. You're coming in saying that if this team is able to get a win against the Packers by rights of the Seahawks losing to the Niners, you have one over the Niners. Now you're 2-0 in the division. Technically, you're playing for first place in the NFC West, which I don't think anyone really saw coming. I think that you can say that, yes, both sides have been decimated by injuries, especially to star players. You're having injuries to Christian McCaffrey, Puka Nacua, and Cooper Kupp. I've also seen the offensive line for the Rams has been hurt. Part of the NFL is just having to get by with what depth that you do have. They come in against the Packers, and this ends up being a game in which the Packers get pretty much trounced by the Minnesota Vikings the week before. It's on the road again. Excuse me. The Cardinals come out of the gate, and you know what they want to do is get a 3-and-out best they can, at least stop or hold to a field goal, take the ball over on offense, be able to go down and score. That's been the game script that has worked well for them. So what happens in this situation against the Packers is they end up starting off the game, and it immediately starts with the first play of the game. They have a hard count, Jordan Love uses, and it pulls off 3 Cardinals into the offsides. They decline the penalty. This is probably the story of the game, Marcos, when we want to talk about whether it's discipline, whether there's something that they saw on tape, whether it's just a loud environment. The Cardinals just ended up having a lot of offside penalties, and it felt like it was a sloppy game in the rain overall. For whatever reason, that hard count was something that the Packers were able to make use of all day against Arizona.
I think it's crazy to hear during this game how many times this team was one of the best teams when it came to like penalties. I think they were the least penalized team.
19 penalties, and then they got 12 to 13 just this game alone. It's like, woof.
Yeah, it was insane. So with that being said, I'm not sure if preparation or coaching is at fault here. I think it was pressure. I think so as we know, the Cardinals haven't won 2 games in a row in, I'm not sure when was the last time. I would think it would be 2021, last time we won back-to-back games. So when we come off a win, we're expected to build off that win. And being that is in May, we were going to Lambeau Field. Lambeau Field is a hard place to play at. Like it's been said so many times. These Cardinals are more designed towards playing inside of a stadium and good weather type of conditions. It wasn't snowing up in Green Bay, but it's chilly. We know it's cold as heck. So it's out of their norm and whatnot. But those aren't excuses. Obviously, the 2018 Cardinals won up in Lambeau Field against Aaron Rodgers with Josh Rosen as quarterback. So that's just not something that we can just point at. But I think it was more so the pressure, because I think this Cardinals team knows what they are. They know that they're underachieving thus far. They know that, like, there's some stats that we're trying to get off of our backs, but like winning back-to-back games. And there was a notion that you have to be like tight and, like, focused, and instead of like playing like, loose and relaxed, which probably could have gotten rid of some of the nerves that they had, because a lot of those miscues were like false starts. They were not lining up where you're supposed to line up, like Calvin Beachum, in his uncharacteristic situation. And of course, false starts with the offensive linemen on both sides and defensive linemen committing those. I think it was just a sloppy game after that happened, when, they got in a little bit of a hole. I know that the Cardinals fans were kind of expecting to be able to dig themselves out like last week's game, but last week's game was like an exception more so than the norm, because this team, when they get down like 14 points or like
the last
20
week,
points,
the defense really was the key, and that was something I noticed after the last week's game. We watched the tape and was like, they stopped them even in their own side of the field. Like, they held them to a field goal, and they either took it away or stopped on fourth down like the other 3 times. The defense won the game for them, gave the offense the opportunity to be able to actually take it to go down and get that field goal. The offense, for what it's worth, had struggled to run the ball. They ran the ball for 50 yards in that first series with Kyler Murray, and had really not been able to run the ball after that. The adjustments that they made down the stretch was able to use Kyler's legs, use James Conner. People are more tired in the fourth quarter. They were able to drive the ball down the field and then got that play to Marv when it mattered the most. What we've seen, at least on the defensive side, though, is that in the first game against the Niners, what we had seen was some adjustments. And I think talking to some Niners fans, they said, when you would show about 6 or 7 guys in the box, it's more optimal for you to throw the ball than it is to run the ball, which makes sense. If you got a loaded box, you're running into a loaded box, it makes things difficult. The Cardinals have been able to essentially have about 8 or 9 guys or so in the box, but because they're running so much 13 personnel, when they have some of those plays, they're able to get guys open because they've got Kyler who can run. Like, Brock Purdy's not going to take as many designed runs just within that offense. And you have to leave a guy in coverage, because if you're going to load the box up and all of a sudden you get a mismatch where Trey McBride's lined up against a safety who's too small for him, or a linebacker who's not going to be able to keep up with him one-on-one, you're going to have to pull that guy back a bit in coverage, and that's allowed the Cardinals' run game, essentially with that philosophy, to continue to work. The defense was able to stop the Niners by pushing into those passing situations. So what happens here against the Green Bay Packers? Well, what the Packers did, at least, was they were able to use a little bit more trickery, but they were just, for the most of the game, able to run it right up the middle. And then with their passing plays, they just trusted Arizona and said, hey, we're going to force you into these type of passing scripts where we're going to have you guys are rushing forward, and we trust our offensive line over your guys' ability to get pressure. I believe Jordan Love had a crazy amount, I believe it was, against pressure in this game. Unless I'm mistaken, it was, I think I'll pull up the stat at least here, Marcos, but he was 11 of 17 for 174 yards and 3 touchdowns, and all dropbacks that were over 2.5 seconds. So, like, in this case right here, you can even take a look and see, this is one of those throws that when Arizona started out, you can see Jordan Love is a different quarterback when he's under pressure. Arizona is able to bring a blitz look. You can at least see here what they do is they kind of cloud up the middle of the field. The running back is protecting there. It's on a long situation. So Arizona's got bodies downfield. You end up with a one coverage situation with, I believe, 13 is going to be it's not Wicks, but I believe that is Wicks. Yes, Wicks. It's
we're
Wicks.
Talking about
Wicks is
Wicks.
Yeah, number 13. Yeah, 21 is the one.
I was like, get excited.
So this is like the game plan that against the pass, you can see when you're in rundown situations, they're running up the middle. When they're in the pass down situations, they're able to be able to dial up something good. Now, unfortunately for Arizona, they did have some issues, and we'll kind of pull up with some of the screens so you can see here. When they were in some of these play action looks where it's not obvious passing situations for 1st and 10, they just do a drop back play fake. You can see Arizona's 4 guys. No one gets pressure. There's a big buff pocket to step up. This is like at least 3 seconds long. No one can cover for that long, unfortunately, Marcos. We got to see this all day for the most part. There was 0 sacks that Love took in the game. He was pressured 12 times, but he was able to make some smart decisions. Some of these throws, you get to see a coverage bust or two that did happen. Biggest takeaway overall was when it comes down to it, the Cardinals have to blitz to get pressure. And so what teams are going to do is they're going to have this quick passing game against those blitz looks. If you're able to run the ball for the most part, you're going to have to be able to balance things out. But for a lot of it, Arizona on 2nd and 5, passing down, they drop back. They're just not able to protect the whole time. You can see Mac Wilson, the guy gets behind him. Jalen Thompson, I believe, in that spot as well. You can see how he's got the coverage up over here. He's essentially kind of dropping into this coverage in that spot here. It looks like they think that they're going to hand off the coverage inside, but instead just ends up where the guy gets behind the defense and is able to make a play. Later in the game, I know it's at 24-13. This is kind of the last chance to stop them. Arizona's only down by 9 points. You can basically get back into the game knowing you can score a touchdown and you can then get a field goal to win it. You just have to kind of hold them. 3rd and 4 play, they at least have another actual blitz that they at least send. He ends up hitting with one of these crazy just throws for the most part on Sean Murphy-Bunting that ends up essentially putting the game away for the Packers on 3rd and 4. This is one of those, you got to throw the ball up blitz looks because they bring everyone off of the line. This is, for all intents and purposes, rushing 7, dropping 4, so it's cover 0. They've got their guys out there. The throw you have to make is throw it essentially even off your back foot, knowing you're going to have an unblocked guy. Love does that, and it's a double move that Sean Murphy-Bunting just loses track of the football. Romeo Dobbs essentially is able to go on the double move and then comes back to the ball. If Bunting is able to turn around, keep track of where the player is, he probably has a chance to knock this ball down at worst. Even if you get a look at it earlier, the ball's going to be thrown short. You'll have a chance to pick it off. I think someone even said, like, for some darn reason, it seems like whenever Jordan Love is like throwing off of his back foot, just heaving it downfield, it's like defensive backs were playing just don't know where the ball is. It's just kind of wild. This was a backbreaker for Arizona. This essentially took them out of the game within the 3rd quarter. And then I think the last one that they had as far as with an unblocked pressure look, you had a nice play action up the middle. You can see with Roy Lopez, Dante Stills is having to line up as the defensive end. They ended up losing some of their defensive tackles, like Bilal Nichols ended up getting lost during the game. They were bringing in, I believe it was Naquan Jones was in there. Cardinals end up having downfield just more issues as far as with the actual protection. This is right out of the half. You're down. I think actually it was right before the end of the half at least. Cardinals get on 24-0. The offense is not able to really run the ball. Kyler Murray as guys who are not getting open. Marvin Harrison Jr.'s lost to a concussion. We did get to see Trey McBride play some, but essentially the play action game, you had enough of the safeties as far as the coverage went. Arizona was just not able to stop them, and they get trounced in this game, Marcos. A lot of fans went from feeling optimistic about this team to despondent, especially with some of the injuries that came out of this game as well.
Yeah, it was definitely the backbreaker that we didn't need, especially after last week's game. I think a lot of people not only were being positive about this, the general media was being positive about the trajectory about the Cardinals, but they were just one win away from being able to get back in a situation where they could possibly not only go 500, I believe, but also be in contention for like 2nd place or, on the way up to, becoming 1st place in the division. And the reason why they have these high hopes is because for the first time in the Cardinals, I'm not sure in probably 3 years or whatnot, they're 2-0 in the division. So they're beating division opponents that they weren't beating before. Kyler Murray is 2-0 for the first time, and I think his entire career against this division. Like, he hasn't had this division's number, and to be fair and to be unfair at the same time, it really isn't his fault. It wasn't his fault his rookie year because he was a rookie. We don't have expectations for that. The second year, they did come up on the division. In 2020, they came out guns blazing. They beat the 49ers. They beat the Seahawks. Crazy. I believe it was a Sunday Night Football game where Isaiah Simmons comes up with that pick in that crazy exotic blitz look that Vance Joseph employed that dropped everybody from looking like they were going to blitz to drop everybody into coverage. And Russell Wilson throws it to Isaiah. And then, of course, we just march down and get the field goal for that dramatic win. I think those are the only circumstances that I can think about where the Cardinals were actually having like this division at a stranglehold. And in 2021, they did come out guns blazing against the Los Angeles Rams, who were ranked first and in the power rankings going into that week. So it wasn't a pushover game. It was a really good game. And if you guys watch that game again, you guys will see great offense by, like, Kyler Murray did some crazy good things in that game that I really loved. Something that, like, I saw in that game, I saw against the Los Angeles Rams again, is a touchdown up the seam to a big receiver. So this was something to build off of, and it just kind of breaks your heart. Like, I don't know how you felt, but like, I felt good, and then this kind of like was a backbreaker, like a back to reality. Like, the Cardinals are the Cardinals, man.
Yeah, that's all. I saw a lot of fans have been upset with Drew Petzing. We'll go into some details on some of what we can look forward to, what they can adjust, what they may not adjust. Some of, I think, how it goes for the Arizona Cardinals, though, is after that 2021 start, we have not seen solid, capable defensive performance, and some of that makes sense. You go through the rest of 2022, and you're not able to win a game after I believe it was Rams game with Colt McCoy. You had Kyler Murray come back, tears his ACL, and then McCoy, I believe against unless I'm mistaken, it was the Broncos, has another concussion/neck injury. They finished the season out on a losing streak. And then you just lose a lot of guys. Like, you're ready to say, are we going to keep Zach Allen? Are we going to let him walk? You're probably another year or two away, and he's ready to get paid. You're going to probably have to let him and Byron Murphy go. J.J. Watt retires. You're just kind of end up being in this rebuild for a year. 2023, we see the team is not able to be put together back-to-back wins. They have one of the tougher schedules being in the NFC West as well. That certainly doesn't help. And coming into 2024, I think the biggest thing that fans took away from was that the offense, we're expecting it to be, if not top 10, at least put the team in position to win the game week in and week out, keep them competitive. And if the defense can do just enough, we've seen that the defense has not been able to essentially step up to be an average defense. But as long as they were able to get a couple of stops and the offense could be what carried the team, we haven't seen the offense carry the team. Now, there have been some good things that we've seen. We'll kind of put this on for those of you watching our video in the background. When they lost Marvin Harrison Jr. to a concussion, you can at least tell that they've had a lot of plays that have gone to him, but it's been a lot of broken up passes, some misses, not being on the same page. One thing that's a little different that we've seen has been they've put Trey McBride, you can see him inside here, Tip Ryan outside. They're able to put him in a spot where he's been able to actually get open, getting some passes deep. These are kind of those, maybe not gimme plays necessarily, but we've seen that the team's structured. It runs through the running backs and through the tight ends. We've really not seen, as far as getting the ball to wide receivers, we've seen some plays that it's worked, but it's been very, very difficult for them to be able to find guys outside. And that's part of why one of the cures we've said is, hey, like, you're missing guys on the offensive line. There's going to be some times they'll need to be able to have those tight ends to run the ball. But using Trey McBride, who was their number one receiver last year, basically came up a few games as the backup short of having a 1,000-yard season. Getting him involved more in the passing game, getting that downfield. Some of these passing plays were, I think, in an Arizona game script where they're just having to throw the ball to catch up. Green Bay's, only driving 4, at least here. You got a nice clean pocket. But being able to at least have this offense go through a different direction than what we've been used to. I think the idea of when you say, we're on defense where offense where everybody eats, defense will throw a guy. Well, guess what? It could be Michael Wilson this week. Could be Trey McBride this week. I think that playing to your strengths that you've had, we've seen the Cardinals kind of force the ball some to Harrison Jr. We really haven't seen them go into a game where they were kind of making sure they could use the players in their best method. As far as in the passing game up until this with Trey McBride, and it really didn't go up against this blitz looks or some of the big rush. The Packers controlled the ball and the clock. Arizona was just kind of having to get things move down the field while they were trailing by so much throughout the game. It's where a lot of people are looking at this. There's people who made some crazy, crazy threats against Drew Petzing. I don't think that that's necessarily wise. No. I think it's one of those spots where Kurt Warner did a breakdown and said, I don't know how workable or efficient some of these routes are for the receivers. Like, there's not as much of a quick game. If teams are going to bring a blitz, like, you're going to be throwing these difficulty routes and some fades. Like, there's some areas that we've talked about with Marvin that you can design some plays. Like, one of the best examples here is, let's say that you've got a guy like a Michael Wilson, Marvin Harrison Jr. pull one of those guys into the backfield, with that size, with the running back there. Suddenly you're able to see if you're going to mismatch on a linebacker. Not, are you going to do every play? No, but it's mixing things up a little bit for the most part. And so what we've kind of seen is the team has fallen back into this sort of pattern where they'll spread teams out, be looking to throw the ball. They'll have a 5-on-4 type of a rush. DeMercado's in there to pass protect. So clearly you can see with having the backup linebacker in there, overloading this side of the field, Kyler ends up just kind of running out of the pocket to scramble, make a play work. It's really been doing the same sort of offense whenever this team gets down and not really having the capacity to come back in the game. Now, again, some of that is because it's hard when you're running the ball. You get into these scripts where you're like, hey, we're running the ball. We took a loss in the play. It's 2nd and 11. We run the ball again and pick up 3 yards on the play. When you're not able to run the ball effectively, or when you're not able to kind of have that 3-dimensional offense, that's when I think, Marcos, we see this team gets limited. So what we've seen teams do is they sell out, stop the run against the Cardinals, put them into these passing situations, and it really ends up coming down then to Kyler Murray having to make a play out of something, or teams, like as far as picking him apart from the pocket. These are just some of those different plays that teams have been content to have as long as they're not giving up the big play. So stop the run, stop the big play. Cardinals have just not been able to effectively have enough of a short intermediate passing game with some of their routes to get guys like Marv open, to get some yards after catch to Trey McBride. And that's going to be reflecting negatively on a Drew Petzing, unfortunately, Marcos, because if you come into last season with a great rushing attack and then teams just take that away for the most part, that's going to be a really hard way for you to win games, because you'll have to at some point be able to win games in a shootout and not just run the ball. Oh, we had a bad pass play. We're going to have to punt. Obviously that will happen. But if you're down 2 to 3 scores before you can even get the ball back, it feels like you really got out-coached in one of those scenarios, Marcos.
Yeah, so this has been like a touchy subject for me because like me and you, we watched all 22. And there's a lot of things that, so let's go back about like a year. So under Josh Dobbs, we saw an offense that kind of operated the same. And I think somebody mentioned or brought up that to Walter Mitchell or somebody that these stats, or I think it was Walter Mitchell himself, that the stats on an eight game sample size with Kyler Murray and Josh Dobbs looked similar. And I think to obviously your ex co-host Johnny Venables had mentioned that like somebody had sent him stats of like a 5 or 6 game sample size and took 5 games from Josh Dobbs. And
I think it's Bo Brock actually is similar. The one who we can pull that up here. But yeah, 23 first 6 games of Josh Dobbs.
Okay, yeah, it was
total
Bo.
Offensively, 331 yards a game. Total rushing yards per game is higher as far as for it's decent. Like they're able to run the ball for the most part. When it comes to like the passing yards per game, passing yards per play, like you're looking at under 200 yards. And I think the biggest area as far as with how people are looking at this team is passing yards can't just be through the tight end and the running backs, because those guys are going to be in the middle of the field, the short passing plays. You have to chip in and block. You have to get the ball to the wide receivers. And what Kurt Warner has broken down is said, hey, if you're looking at this team, it's not just one single issue or problem. Like you're not effectively running the ball in the first down. Maybe someone brings a blitz, they're unprotected. James Conner, you're just not able to kind of get that extra push up the middle of the field or able to get outside. And when you've got these passing plays, one of the things we noticed with Marv, he doesn't have any of these quick slants over the middle for the most part. Like he's running this long route, coming back. He's running these deep routes down the field, running along kind of a drag across the middle of the field, kind of having to hit him between those two safeties. I think the issue, at least that we've talked about, and I've mentioned this too, is it seems like Petzing's passing game is built off of the running game. And if you take the running game away,
it is.
They don't have the offensive line to be able to protect for long. So sometimes you're like, look at in Commanders game, 2 or 3 guys came open down the field. But Kyler's already under pressure. You can't see him. John Allen, who's out for the year, is missing, or at least an IR, I think, for the most part. Kyler's under pressure. You're going to have to then have some of the short plays. Cliff Kingsbury, how he dealt with those plays, he would try to do little bubble screens and other different passes for the most part. And the idea is, hey, either you need to be able to get a more effective run game where teams have to be able to blitz you, to be able to get another guy down in the box, or you're going to have to effectively have a passing and says, hey, we're going to have to throw the ball 50 times to win. We're going to throw the ball 50 times to win. They don't seem capable of that so far. And I think it's going to put a lot of pressure on Drew Petzing to have to make adjustments because, against these better defenses, it seems like Cardinals offense for the most part has been figured out, and the production that we've seen here from what Cardinals fans expected has been kind of the same as we saw in 2023. It's really a case where if you say that the talent level is the same, you added a Marvin Harrison Jr., you're starting Trey McBride from the beginning of the season. You got Greg Dortch into a full-time role. As far as with last year, he was kind of just the other guy you would try to design little plays to use his speed to get open with. Rushing game has been down. It's one of those cases where you wonder, have we reached the ceiling with Drew Petzing, or are we going to see the Cardinals make some changes and adjustments? I think that those adjustments, like Kurt Warner said, may be too much to happen in such a short time. By the time the Cardinals are going to turn it around, that's the biggest difficulty, I think, in terms of what we're seeing with this offense.
Yeah, because like here's the scenario. Before I get on my soapbox about this whole offensive thing, here's the scenario. We get rid of Drew Petzing, you're going to have to elevate somebody from within. So somebody could say, you got to bring him from the outside. You bring somebody from the outside, you're now employing a different offense with different terminology, different cues, different tales, different philosophy in like 6 games into the season to be able to like. So the thing that I was looking forward to was we had the offseason with Kyler Murray being in this offense, reading the playbook, getting his reps with all his wide receivers and this offense. And I told myself, I don't know how you felt, but at the end of last season, I think we all felt positive about it, especially because we looked at that Seattle game and we saw a lot of positives. We saw Michael Wilson going off and having good chemistry with Kyler Murray. We saw that the run game was being dominant, and we even said to ourselves, this offense is built off the run because you're going to have a lot of under center action. But when Kyler Murray came back, I even mentioned to you, we're not going to see a lot of under center for the first couple of games of Kyler Murray's career. It went like 6 games in before they started employing heavy under center option. And it always happened on the first 2 drives of the game, which is why they were so successful.
Wouldn't happen as much in the middle, of course. So that's,
but that's what I have to ask. Like, so why is that? We have a off season already. So we had off season where these guys were able to practice it, learn the playbook. Kyler Murray was even asked, like, hey, what do you feel about this offense? He said, it fits me better because I don't have to do as much. So he had said that. It feels like, and they are employing more motion, and they are doing a lot more under center action, but it feels like he's almost in the same boat as he was with like a situation with like Cliff, where you almost want him to be like, hey, you have to be the Superman, because I think that type of offense is tailored towards you. And I would always refer to like Alex Rollins for like what he said. There's an offense that's called Kyler Ball, and the Kyler Ball is basically like throws to the outside to his big wide receivers on comebacks, on out routes, where he extends a lot of plays, or he keeps the ball with him, or he extends, or he picks up the first down with his legs.
Yeah,
and
the shorter type of quarterback where you're able to essentially, like, with the size of big guys on the outside for the most part, are able to kind of take advantage with those deep throws. You try to run the ball up the middle, or at least have Kyler as a run threat to try to bring those safeties down. And then as far as for being able to have those passing downs in between, we saw with Zach Ertz, it kind of just mirrors that Oklahoma offense is really what it is for the most part, Marcos. Look at the bigger guy in a CeeDee Lamb. You got the deep threat in a Hollywood Brown type. Right. They don't have in here. It's the closest thing is a Greg Dortch, but then you're really making a lot of the plays with, I think over the middle was Mark Andrews was the tight end that had been there with Baker. It was Grant Calcaterra for that one season with Murray. You also have some really strong protections where Kyler's got a lot of time behind that line. That's something that obviously any offense in the NFL is going to have help with some of that. Cardinals right now have a pretty cheap offensive line because Will Hernandez is in the last year of his deal. Paris Johnson's a rookie. The biggest guy that they went out and got for essentially a 2-year starting contract was Jonah Williams at about $20 million guaranteed for 2 years. But as far as the interior of the line, you got a Froholt who's a little bit lucky. You just don't have necessarily this like, oh, we've got Pro Bowlers across this line. Like, it's like you're at least in a spot where you can recognize that you're building. Where I think a lot of people had different expectations, Marcos, is that these receiver group, with the attention paid to Marvin Harrison Jr., putting Dortch full-time as far as the slot, having those multiple tight end looks, you thought, hey, at worst, you're going to get some one-on-one coverage with Michael Wilson. Instead, we go from last year, the Cardinals being 32nd in receiving yards. You're like thinking there's some positive momentum. They still end up being pretty low in receiving yards. And some of it comes down to little plays like this. Marvin Harrison Jr. is on the wrong page with Kyler Murray. He starts kind of doing more of a comeback route while the ball actually ends up being expecting him to move forward and throw. You can see going at least to the next passing play for the most part. We'll take a look at this one here. This is like a almost predetermined look, just not on the same page for the most part. And again, like some people have said, he's a rookie. Things are coming fast. They're not really giving him like the quicker, easy design throws. Like here, just run this comeback route on this play design. Like he's got multiple things he's going to have to read through or read from. You can see in this game, Xavier Weaver is active for the first time. And I believe that it was on one of these plays like here. You can see they got the deep play action from under center. Tip Ryman, I believe, ends up staying in as Trey McBride goes out. They're just setting up a screen pass here for the most part. You can see that part of the offensive design and how that stands out. This is part of what their offense, what we're expecting with Arizona is like being able to mix it up a little bit. But when it comes to some of these passing plays, the passing plays of the receivers has been the biggest issues.
Those are the plays that used to go to tight end Trey McBride. Those are exactly the ones I'm talking about. The under center fake. Yep. So the under center fake handoff and dump off to Trey McBride so you can get the yak yardage. I want them to go back to that because here's three things that they need to do to be able to get back into the flow and maximize Kyler Murray, because it's not just about maximizing this offense. It's about maximizing your quarterback. You gotta go back to the outside throws on comebacks, on back shoulder fades, big time throws. Is him targeting his guys to the outside. You got the size now. You got some of the speed. And you got the bulkiness, so go ahead and do that. Two.
The other thing I was going to say real quick, at least for all that, was we'll watch this play here in a second, at least for the most part, because we'll see also the impact of injuries. But go ahead and finish your point there too.
Number two is going back to the shotgun QB read, type of like formations and stuff, where you pretty much are either running the running back parallel to the line of scrimmage and having the QB read the edge defender, or doing the opposite where you have in the pistol, you fake the handoff in the pistol and then you read the defender. If the defender crashes, obviously you go and you take it yourself. If he doesn't and he's on his surfboard, then you hand it off. And that number three is you got to really, really start getting McBride like as the main focal point, because McBride can get that 7-8 yard gain to the over the middle throws. He's a big target. He has great hands, and he's Kyler Murray's favorite target. I can already tell just by looking at the film that he's his favorite target. He target locks on him because he trusts him. So if those three things happen, the sky's the limit.
Yeah, and I think some of the plays that we see as far as the design, you can also see how there's design, there's execution. Will Hernandez is out for the season. You got Kelvin Beachum here. You can see Tristan Colon is coming in there at right guard. This is a setup for a screen pass to James Conner all the way. You can see at least Trey McBride for how he's lined up with the four guys who are going to be rushing. You can tell that McBride's either going to chip and release. You got trips left up over on here. But when you watch how this play goes, you can look and see it's clearly designed to be a screen all the way. The goal is they've got Froholt already downfield blocking. They're trying to see if they can be able to get another guy out there. You get two things that go wrong on the play. One is that James Conner slips on the grass. The other is that Cologne, he just gets pushed back where he's not able to actually block the guy into the ground like Will Hernandez would have been able to kind of hold his ground, be able to hold steady. Or if you're starting to get beat, you can at least throw the guy to the side, even into your quarterback, knowing I just need to get this guy out of the way so I can release and get downfield. So the pressure gets too quickly. Kyler checks it down, and James even slips at least on the turf, isn't even able to get to that. So now you're set up into a third and long type of situation. This is where I said it's not just one thing, Marcos. This is a combination of wet grass, player slips. You've got injuries for each of those places, and the way that you've even designed for some of the plays, you're trying to be able to get that screen set up where you'll be able to have James Conner in space with Froholt able to block. Conner's upset because he knows that, hey, Kyler still got that ball off despite having the pressure. You get to this third down look here, and this is going to be the one across the middle of the field to Michael Wilson. You can see at least here as far as with the deep drop back in the pocket for the most part. Part of that at least even is when you're talking about some of these deeper drops with a shorter quarterback. He's making sure that when he drops off, he's going to be able to have the window. You can see here the linebacker's reading his eyes. He's going to have to kind of hold that guy, and then he throws it. Perfect pass over there to Wilson. Michael ends up it's slightly behind, but when you're talking about how those types of passes and plays work with under pressure, usually they say it's 2 hands, gets 1 ball, he gets it, kind of cradles it against the inside, and it gets chopped up and slips out of him on a rainy day. This is just one of those things, at least, where when you're talking about how if it's just one thing that you can blame Marcos, it'd be super easy to be like, oh, just fire Pat Singh, a new play caller, that's all it is. There's a lot more that we can see that's happening with this, which is why maybe some of the design of the offense is weak enough where, like I've said, I felt like you're going to have to design some more plays for Marvin Harrison Jr., for Trey McBride, make some of those different choices. But in some cases, you got to make your layups. And the last 2 plays the Cardinals had here, they're at midfield, driving down the field. They have 2 layup plays, and they missed both of them. And that's something that is unfortunate because it's like, it's football. You're going to have times that guys are just going to come. I think that looking back at last week's game where it was a highly emotional victory, you locked in, the Cardinals were able to deliver, and then this next upcoming week, it makes sense that they'd have a little bit of a letdown. I think that what we're going to have to watch and figure out, Marcos, is are you going to be able to bounce back from this letdown, or do you see the Cardinals sink a little bit? Because they've had at least enough good design and watching some of these different plays and areas that I think they'll probably have to go to the well if Marvin Harrison Jr. misses a game with a concussion, have to use more of McBride, even use Ryman on some passing plays. We've seen them have some of the flexibility. The downside of, like we've seen for the most part, is it does really feel like on these passing game and passing concepts, they're just playing down to where other teams are. And that's where I think the Niners did last week. They played down to the Cardinals level. And what we're hoping for is that Arizona is going to be able to, at least moving forward, figure out some different ways and adjustments that they can make, because as it goes, their passing offense is not broken necessarily, but it really is just dependent on Kyler Murray. And a lot of these, like, take a look at this play right here. You got nobody open in the middle of the field. They're showing a nice little look with having, I think, 5 guys on the line. They bail one into coverage. These are one of those areas where you'd love to be able to see some quick types of play hits. This is one of those plays here. One of those little adjustments that's there. Even with Chris Moore, by the time that you're even to have him available, like, he's having to kind of break free. Some of the different areas of separation I felt like too. You take a look at this. And what do you notice right away? You got no pre-snap motion that's heading up. So a lot of times with the pre-snap motion, how the Dolphins and other teams would use it, I don't think you can go fully into that mode because some teams have even adjusted to it. You can then send a guy in motion, get him off of the line. Even the likes of Chris Moore that's over there, you can even just send him into motion on one of those different plays. Make sure you time the snap up right. Getting one of those guys into a moving pattern would get him a little bit quicker open for the most part. Like right here, as far as Greg Dortch goes, you can see how they've designed this passing play. Both guys are able to turn around, but this is supposed to be either the quick hitter to Dortch he's reading. He's just gotten too much closer to man coverage. By the time the ball gets there, he's able to be on it. And this one to Wilson, he's trying to find the soft spot. By the time he gets open with the one passing play across the middle of the field, that's just a really tough throw backwards across your body. The design that I would have on this play here is, hey, you want to be able just to go and have a quick throw. He just hits that drop back. Boom, ball gets out. Wilson comes back around. You can catch the ball, get upfield. We saw lots of times that Cliff Kingsbury would have some of those quick plays to DeAndre Hopkins. They'd be dropping a guy back. Hopkins would be ready, catch the ball, make a guy miss, and suddenly you're at 2nd and 5 versus back and Kyler having to run out for a 1st and 10 sort of look. So I think the philosophy that Drew Petzing has right now, Marcos, there's changes he's going to have to make, some out of necessity, some out of the fact that Cardinals are not able to run the ball as well. However, much of that is due to missing 2 guys starting. Evan Brown has had some up and down games. You're probably going to have to also accept that by taking DJ Humphries off the field with Paris Johnson moving him to left tackle, you probably had your 2 best run blockers outside of Froholt. You're down to 2 of those guys now. You're going to have to find out and find ways to be able to adapt and win in some different games, because in some of these situations, you can see Kyler's just having to kind of play backyard football to make some of these plays work. And at the end of the day, they're just not able to really overcome just some of these issues very quickly. And it's going to take a lot of time, I think, to be able to figure that out and get it fixed, because the downside of that is Cardinals don't have a lot of time. They're down 2 and 4 already. They have a tough kind of meaty part of the schedule that's coming up, but they have to get through this Chargers game up front. By the time you get to 2 and 5, it's going to be really interesting to see if that's going to just be too late. So this is the play, I believe, where Marv had that concussion as well, as far as a passing play. For those of you watching on our YouTube channel, he basically runs, gets caught between two players for the most part, ends up kind of hitting his head on the turf, was woozy, and then just kind of fell back to the ground after getting up. His head ran right into the pad of the linebacker. Just like, there's plays in football like that are going to happen. He gets up and then falls over after that. So you're missing your probably second best weapon outside of McBride for the rest of the game. It doesn't seem like that there's as many issues or problems with some of these passing concepts when you look through. It just feels kind of like they need to tighten things up to be able to make it where Kyler's able to have some of those quick passing options versus this constant have to get the short game. Passing yards, Marcos, and I think that's what we're going to have to watch for from Drew Petzing over the next few games, especially if Cardinals are going to be underhanded the whole rest of the year on the right side, and we're going to be having questions about, is this an offense that is going to work well for Kyler Murray, or is this going to be your running backs and tight ends type of offense, occasionally get an explosive play to a receiver? That's something that I think you're going to have to make a change as far as being able to have these receivers getting a bit more open for the most part, not just on these Kyler Murray scrambles, Marcos.
Yeah, but as I mentioned before, so putting him in a different type of philosophy and offense. What happens if we see the same thing? Like, let's just say we put him in a Ben Johnson. He's the next hot commodity. Let's say after the season's over, we end up 6-11 or something like that, or 6-12.
Let's say that Michael moves on, like in a rebuild. He's like, I don't believe in this rebuild. We move on. Like, even you bring an offensive guy.
And he cleans house, and we bring somebody like Ben Johnson and like the hot commodity, the dude that everybody's going to be going after. So the type of philosophy that he runs is strong. Same thing, strong running game, building off of like the passing game. There's actually a video out there from Thinking Football, big fan of theirs, about like Ben Johnson and his scheme, and they talk profusely mostly about like the blocking techniques of his offensive lineman. But that offensive lineman was built by like first rounders. It's a talented, crazy offensive line.
Wide receiver one in the 4th round and Amon-Ra St. Brown. Like, there's areas as far as
the tight end, of course.
The tight end. They also had a first rounder on a running back at David Montgomery. Like you said, you have weapons, you're making use of them, but like you said, the approach is we're going to be able to throw the ball because we understand like Jared Goff is not as good when he's pressured as when he's passing from a clean pocket. So keeping that offensive line with the pass protection, but also getting the ball out quick to be able to have a focal point on, we're going to run the ball down your throat while also making sure that our quarterback is protected. Cliff's approach, a lot of times he could get even baited into bubble screens where essentially the defense would dictate some of how they would kind of be able to play some different areas in philosophy, whereas the Lions are more the ones dictating it to some of the teams. Now, the good news is, Marcos, like, you may not go out and get Ben Johnson, but by having a Jonathan Gannon and having him be kind of that culture bringer, your hope at least is, hey, if Drew Petzing can figure it out, they work together, they're able to make some of these different shifts and changes, we see the Cardinals be able to progress as an offense. That's like the hope, because then you don't have to make a move. If you do have to make a move, you can take a look at the team and go, Nick Rallis has had an underfunded defense that's been able to, at least for the most part, keep the team in some of those games, and the offense either will come through or it won't. Offensively, I should say, at least, we've kind of seen this team underperform a bit, and the question then is how much of this is still a talent type of issue, or just you got to be like getting all 5 of those guys out there, keeping those 2 bookend tackles for the Lions, having that plethora of weapons available. And how much of it is just that they have not hit the ceiling that they've needed to have, in part because they're still having to essentially focus on the run game first, and that passing game essentially is just a little bit more limited, and teams are taking advantage of that as far as when it comes to the routes, the concepts, and the reads. That's, I think, at the end of the day, we want to find out what that answer is.
Yeah, and just to add on to this, that we just talked about the defense, because there's some things that I do like about Nick Rallis. There's some things that I don't like about Nick Rallis. And I believe I saw a tweet about like somebody asking him about the scheme, and his answer was pressure, like,
maybe,
yeah. But there's things that I can back up for that to like why he's doing it, because there's one thing that he's doing that I do like is bringing pressure from the second level, having them time and not declare any type of pressure. But yes, they're not known as being a like, a pressure type of team. So as we're talking about the defense, I don't know if you remember what that 2013 that roster looked like, or coming off of the 2012 season. So people want to talk about the longevity of how successful teams are built and whatnot. In 2013, the Cardinals were the 7th ranked defense. I believe in 2012, they're number 1 when it comes to scoring defense, or number 2 when it comes to scoring defense. And they're number, I think, yards. They did allow a lot of yards, but that also propelled for, the coach for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, Todd Bowles, to become the next head coach and become the hot commodity. So
and he went to the Jets,
5.
of course, because the Jets have just been unfortunately like a death knell for whatever coach seems to go there. Even this season, they didn't survive. But
in 2015,
I agree with you here.
Ranked. Yep. Actually, no, it shows that they're 7th. So they're constantly like a top
10 defense.
Top 10 defense. And 2016, I believe they had a crazy good year. And the problem that year was, that's something that I wish we could talk about someday, because that's an anomaly of a year. Yeah. But in 2016, they were ranked actually further down. No, they were 14th total overall. The whole point is to maintain success and longevity, to be able to make it so that your offense does have a chance. It uses the entirety of the playbook. Having a good defense out there that can get stops when you need them to, or they can do things like, win games just off of turnovers and whatnot. That's essential. And if you look at those rosters, those defensive rosters are stacked.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, and this 2013 Cardinals roster, like you said, about what was inherited, they got a better quarterback than advertised in Carson Palmer, but this is still essentially going off of some of these top draft class. They brought back, I believe it was for one single season, Carlos Dansby as an inside linebacker. They had already hit on Darrell Washington. You're still having Calais Campbell as a hit and Darnell Dockett as a hit. So your front 7 essentially has like 5 Pro Bowlers, and you drafted Patrick Peterson the year before. You find a hit in Tyrann Mathieu. Like you said, we are seeing some interesting comparisons between the Cardinals, some of those draft classes. And of course, like we had talked about earlier, their offense, they did not invest in the offensive line. Most of what we saw that they actually did was they hit on a guy late in Andre Ellington. They had Rashard Mendenhall was kind of their main running back. But really it came down to they hit on Larry Fitzgerald. He's an older player at age 30, an older guy in Carson Palmer. When you look at the 2023 Cardinals, let me make sure I can get to the right spot for those of you who are
2023.
Yeah, 2020. Well, yeah, 2023 Cardinals to start the year. Their roster was pretty low there. Let me go and pull up the roster and players here. So you come into the league without Kyler Murray. You don't have a quarterback, so you got Josh Dobbs. You got a couple of similarities. You got James Conner as like your Pro Bowl running back. You draft an offensive lineman. The offensive lineman from the Arians era, and Jonathan Cooper gets hurt. You still have a veteran. So really, you've kind of invested more into the line with Humphreys, Hernandez, Johnson's been your investments. They didn't invest in receiver. This would have been the year where you would have probably had DeAndre Hopkins left over, but they cut him because they didn't want to have that cap hit in a few years. Defensive side, where are your Pro Bowlers? Oh, that's right. They were basically Zach Allen and J.J. Watt, who retired. So you've got an underfunded defense. You go out there at least with your first round of draft picks, and they really invested into the offense, and I don't really blame them. It was an offensive-heavy draft for the most part, at least, that you're looking at. They were pretty depleted. You end up with Paris Johnson at right tackle, and then you end up with I believe that your second-round pick you traded down from, and so you end up rolling out some of the other players. Let me remember who the names are, at least here. You already had Trey McBride at least in there for the most part. Gosh, this is escaping me at least. So who would be the other player that they had as far as what they traded back in the second round and were able to get?
Melton? Or Ojulari.
Ojulari, that's right. B.J. Ojulari. He's not playing this year. So, that's kind of one of those areas where the investments that you've made for the Cardinals so far, we haven't seen some of those pay off. We'll talk about more of this with our later show as we do that, and then also preview some of the rest of the season. But then coming into this 2024 season, what's really interesting is you start to see some similarities to the 2013 season. So you're talking about, all right, so you've got at least obviously some other guys in Buddha who are there for the most part with the current roster. But you actually have a Marvin Harrison Jr., who's like a first-year rookie. It looks like you've hit on him. You're seeing a Max Melton is actually out there being able to make plays. The guy you got in Williams from the year before is also being able to make some plays. What you're also seeing is some guys who are just not doing as well. Sean Murphy-Bunting is the guy who got beat on the one play against the Packers. He looks like he's been not a great free agent signing, which is what we've seen as well. Tip Ryman already looks like he's going to be one of the better blocking tight ends, but there's still some issues with him. You got a safety already who's replacing like that Buda Baker in 2017, Tyrann Mathieu in 2013 role, and Rabbit. This is one of those things where I think what we looked at in the 2013 Cardinals is that they were probably about a year away. And we saw that in 2014, they nearly made the playoffs. I think, Marcos, we were probably a year away from being a year away in 2023 when we've hit 2024. Suddenly we go, oh, there's that 2013 Cardinals team that we can see that had some other older players who were there, some other new stars get into that 2013, 2014 draft class. They really did not have the same amount of veteran talent coming into that team as they did in 2013. And then in 2014, they were able to kind of make more of a run for it. And of course, obviously, we know how that 2015 season ended up. Marcos, I think the biggest thing is when you're looking back at some of the people in this rookie draft class, we'll have to see how a guy we haven't seen yet plays in Darius Robinson. We'll have to see if I think it's Jones. Right. Jones is able to make some plays. They haven't really been able to see much from their offensive linemen. We have not seen Isaiah Adams play yet. We haven't seen Christian Jones do as much. We've really just seen they got a left tackle, very similar to how Arizona was able to get Jared Valdir and then to DJ Humphries for their left tackle spot. I think it's going to just be another off season, and that's harder for people to look at because, let's be honest, Bruce Arians in 2013, like you said, top 10 defense, had all those Pro Bowl players, immediate success, because they were a defensive team that had a good front seven with Darrell Washington, and they were able to do enough on offense to make it work. That team was a team that didn't have an offensive line and didn't have essentially a quarterback at the position, and we really got to see Bruce Arians turn it around quick. As soon as those veterans on defense went away, Calais Campbell goes away. Then you see going into the, I think it was 2019 season, they try to bring Terrell Suggs. Eventually, when Chandler Jones goes away after 2021, man, you just really end up with seeing a lot of that defensive talent bleeds out, even on the wide receiver spot. Fitzgerald retires, Christian Kirk retires. You have DeAndre Hopkins, and he's not happy. You got to have to pay him again. And with how he's gone from Hop doesn't miss games to missing 6 games, missing more due to injury, you realize you probably need to get this guy out of the building for now so you can build more of your culture and at the same time bring in a new wide receiver on a rookie deal to play with Kyler Murray while he's on that large paid deal. This is one of those spots where it's going to take time and people are going to have to be patient, Marcos. And that's one thing that Cardinals fans have not been known for. Because we get to 2 and 4 and people are talking already about moving on or firings. I saw someone the other day at least say, hey, Kyler's the one constant throughout this whole issue. Just build up his reputation enough, trade him to a team like the Dolphins, tank for another year, and then, hey, look, you can get Archie Manning. It feels like that's saying, all right, if your only strategy to get better is to then say we have to blow it all up and get worse, I haven't seen enough evidence for that. I think we've seen this is more just that 2013 Cardinals team that doesn't have the same defensive veterans. You're still a step back from where that is, but we can see those building blocks coming in where you can say, oh, okay, this might be a building block the Cardinals can work on with some of these young players and draft picks are out there making plays, learning. We're just not getting the immediate results I think the Cardinals fans had wanted right out the gate. And that's a tough place to be because you don't know, are you going to build this up for 2 to 3 years and you still go 6-10, or are you going to suddenly be able to see the Cardinals over those next 3 years take their time for the first time in a while, not force it? Maybe that's the way to build some long-term sustainable success versus that 2015 that fell off in 2016, 2017, and that 2021 team that didn't even last the whole season before it completely fell off as well.
Yeah, and it took time for that 2013 team to come together because we had them in – they were getting built from 2007 and on forward. So every draft from 2007 forward, you were getting one piece after another that was either a starter or a Pro Bowl that was just getting built on. And that's one thing that the Cardinals dedicated themselves to do early on in those years, to the point where in 2008, the defense wasn't great, but they were a turnover type of defense. They were scrappy. They really did help propelled this Cardinals, aside from the offense playing out of their mind as well, and Larry Fitzgerald, to take him to the Super Bowl that year. And that just remained a constant afterwards. I think we're talking about a different story if healthy, if Justin Jones is out there, Bilal Nichols, as much as he's much maligned, it's better than what we have out there currently right now. If you have one good piece on as an edge rusher that's like a sack getter, whether that should have been Will Anderson or not, or whether you should have traded for somebody, we're one piece away from there. The cornerbacks, we're hitting the shotgun approach, which is unfortunate. We didn't do that before, but we're doing that now. The safeties have been the most consistent part of this defense. It has been. And the linebackers have been up and down. They haven't been the tackle getting like playmakers that we've had in those past defenses.
It's been better than
I think the microphone either cut off.